Welcome back. It's now time to head to the nation's capital, Abuja, talk about Trademore Estate. For those who don't live there, that area has been, susceptible to all kinds of flooding year in, year out, whenever the rains come. And this has become a contentious issue between the people resident in that estate and the government. I'm talking about the FCT authority. That's why we're exploring the issue. We're being joined in the program by the spokesperson of Trademore Residents Association and the chairman of that estate, Mr. Inemesit Udofia. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
All right, I understand you're the spokesperson of the chairman of the association, so I'm sure you have all the details. For people who are not very familiar, this is national television, so maybe walk us through what's been going on with this recent flood and why this is always a recurrent decimal.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. The issue of flood in Trademore has been a recurring issue. And as residents of that place, we've been able to, take our plight to all the necessary, bodies addressing this issue. And as early this year, around February, the Ministry of Environment called a stakeholders meeting where all the parties, associated with anything flood within the nation were addressed. They came together and we looked at the issue of flood in Trademore Estate holistically. And one of the major issues that was agreed on was that with some engineering structures in place, all this can be corrected. And nothing was made mentioned about demolishing of houses. Demolition of houses is never a solution, to cropping the issue of flood within Trademore Estate. Trademore Estate existed as far back as 2006, and we've been living there without flood incidents not up till 2014. Now, the cause of flood in Trademore Estate is not within Trademore, but the adjoining estates that are developing, houses around Trademore. They happen to channel their waterways into Trademore. Now, as residents of Trademore, we've done our best, to curtail these issues. We have carried out a lot of activities, which includes the drainage of the flood channels, carrying out some construction of retaining walls. We've done a lot to do, to crop this issue. But we are using this medium now to call on government, because from the communique that we had from Ministry of Environment, there were short-term and long-term, remedies to these issues. Now, on the part of the residents and the developers, we have fulfilled our own side of the bargain. But we are using this opportunity to call on government to also come in and intervene, because they are the ones that will really, salvage this situation. Ecological Fund carried out a project around that area, and there is a bridge that was constructed just in front of Trademore residents. Now, that bridge happens to be the major challenge where flood, keeps reoccurring in Trademore. The waterways is actually, blocking, or the bridge is blocking the waterways from, carrying water out of Trademore. Once water is obstructed, the next line of action is for the water to bounce back and it to start accumulating. So this is the cause of the recent flash flood that we just had in Trademore. And we are, appealing that government should help us address these issues so that we'll put an end to all this menace.
But some are saying that people had built on floodplains, places where they are not supposed to build. I want you to speak to that, because you're saying demolition is not the answer. So perhaps the people who are calling for demolition are saying you're building on the wrong path, so it has to go so that the waters can find its path.
Okay, as regards that, the director of NEMA was on ground in this recent flood, and from her statement, she noted herself that the flood pattern has been diverted away from where residents are living. Now, the standard is that any estate developing should give at least 20 meters away from the waterways. And Trademore has done exactly that. She made that comment even in a report that she did, that she has noticed that the floodplain has been diverted away from where residents are staying. So I wonder why, having seen that and having, noticed that the flood has nothing to do with where residents are living, why then go ahead to recommend demolition? So these are the issues that we are saying, because last year demolition was carried out within Trademore. Some houses, were demolished. Those places are now, causing a very huge nuisance within the estate, because we are finding it difficult to manage those areas. So coming back to demolish over 100 and something houses, according to our own speech, I mean, it's total waste of government resources. So we have called on government, all the different parastatals that looked at these issues, they came to the conclusion that with an engineering solution, these issues can be addressed. And that's why we are calling on government to come and assist us.
Now, Mr. Enemesit, besides the position of the FCTA that some of the structures in Trademore Estate are built on floodplain, I remember last year the Executive Secretary also said that a lot of the structures did not have approval. And you also said at the beginning of your commentary that some of the challenges that you're currently facing is that some other neighboring estates are building such that they're channeling their drainage systems into Trademore. Now, during the meeting that you had early this year with the FCTA authorities, were these issues tabled? How are those estates, residents in those estates and their developers securing approvals to build structurally wrong, development, so to speak, that is also having implication for Trademore Estate?
Yeah, that's one of the issues that we, took to government, because we called on development control, we called on all FCT, ministry as a whole to look into the issue of approvals. If you notice, most of these developing estates coming in after Trademore, most of them are actually building their houses along the waterways. If you go to the back of a Trademore, where we have estates like Director's Estate, they are building their houses along the waterways. And these estates were given approval by probably development control, or I don't know where they got the approval from. So these are the issues that we've been telling government, that if anything needs to be demolished, let them start from those new estates that are actually building their houses along the waterways. And once that is done, the water will be constrained, and water will always find its course. Once the repercussion is what falls back to Trademore. Trademore was the first estate that, came up within that area. And we have our approvals in place. The developer has all these, that area was handled by AMAC before FCDA took over. And all the approvals for that estate is in place. So I wouldn't know, why, government is, towing that line that we don't have approval for our development.
Well, just to state that we had reached out, of course, to the government side, the FCT Emergency Management Department, but the representative declined to show on this. But let's speak to now what the FCTA has done, or had done last year, which is declaring that area a disaster zone. And the implication is that people affected or in that area are meant to evacuate. Now, that was done last year, and as you said, this is a yearly thing, literally. And we had hoped that after last year, we'll come back here and say, well, finally, we found a solution to it. So speak to us. After Trademore was declared emergency zone, some demolitions were carried out, which you say is disturbing the estate now. First, is Trademore still a disaster zone? Did people evacuate as a result of that? Or people are choosing to stay put because perhaps they think this is the only thing we have anyway? I hope you got my question, Mr. Enemesit.
Yeah, I didn't get it. Please come again.
So my question is that last year, the area was declared an emergency zone. And by implication, people have to evacuate. The FCTA declared it an emergency zone. So I'm trying to find out if that is still the case today, if from your interface, you're still viewed as an emergency zone, if people have evacuated or they're choosing to stay put, understanding that we're not even at the worst of the floods just yet.
I didn't quite get you well, but if I did, I think you're asking why government, designated that area to be a floodplain.
An emergency zone. Last year, the government declared the area emergency zone, asking people to evacuate. So I'm asking if people are evacuating or they are staying put, and what will happen when the rains even get worse?
Okay, well, like I said, I don't know where they got the source of that information from, but Trademore and its environment is not there is no threat to life or properties. It's not an emergency zone. Now, we've lived there for over 16 or 18 years now, and this thing happens probably once in a year. And just last year was the one that really impacted much, which made us, to take our plight to Ministry of Environment and all the government bodies, addressing these issues. And when they came on board, the solution was that evacuating or demolishing houses is not the solution to that issue. Rather, if government put in place the necessary infrastructure, then those issues can be addressed, and people will live there, happily without any issue. So please, that's why we are calling on governments to assist us on that line.
Well, I just wanted to say that this was actually said by the Executive Secretary of the FCDA, Shehu Ahmed, last year, that is around July, that the area has been declared a disaster zone. That was the word that was used, a disaster zone. So just to put that in proper context. Jeffrey.
Okay, I want to follow up on that question. I know that I read somewhere where recommendations were made that diversion can start for these waters from, I think, local Goma and Yakasa area, maybe the upstream part, to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. So let's start talking solution. You've had this conversation with the authorities, and everybody from that estate seems to be saying demolition is not the answer. So what then should be the phase-by-phase approach to see that this doesn't happen again or is reduced to a point where it's negligible?
Okay, first and foremost, government need, to fulfill their own side of the communique that was given by the Ministry of Environment. Now, what government needs to do, first and foremost, Ecological Fund needs to come and reposition that bridge. The bridge that was constructed along that Trademore is one of the major source of, flooding in that area. That bridge is not positioned rightly. So once water comes, it hits on that bridge and bounces back to Trademore. So we've called on them to, get an engineering drawing that will address that situation. And then, like you rightly said, water coming to Trademore is coming all the way down from Lugogoma, Aleta, Lugbe, and even after Trademore, it extends down to what they call this estate, one other estate across the road. Now, all those areas are actually areas where water passes through. So if government wants to handle this thing holistically, then they should start by, stopping most of the estates that have built along those floodplains, thereby giving water its way to pass naturally. Once those avenues are created for the water to pass through, then we won't have anything like flood within or around Trademore.
Now, Mr. Nemesis, there are reports that 2 persons have died, amid this flooding. And I wonder, if this is worth it, the stress, the loss of property, this loss of life, is it worth it? And you may have to confirm that report also. Okay,
so I would like to note here that that information was a false alarm. Even the director of NEMA confirmed when she visited the scene that there was no loss of life. I wonder what people will stand to gain, spreading false rumor about a particular area. The incidents that happened on the 24th was just a flash flood that affected the entrance of Trademore Estate. It didn't affect any life. No life was lost. it didn't affect any property.
Pardon me, did you say the flooding did not affect any property? Because we saw the flood taking over houses. How do you mean did not affect any property?
Yeah, those houses were evacuated since last year.
Right.
We had illegal occupants occupying those places, and they've been told to evacuate that place. So those places were already marked for demolition because Ecological Fund marked the entrance of that Trademore gate that we should shift it to another area to enable them carry out the correction of that breach which is around that area. So the developer did his own part by evacuating the residents of that place and all those things. We are just waiting for Ecological Fund to come and start that project.
Right. So if I get you correctly, what you're saying now is that as things are now, there needs to be no more demolitions because the ones that are meant to be demolished have been marked. And from this flood that we saw, it didn't affect where people actually stay. Is that what you're saying? So they can maintain status quo as it is right now?
Yes.
So yes. The question then is, if this is maybe clear enough to at least the residents and all, so what is the government side of things? What is the FCTA or FCDA saying regarding this? And you've talked about Ecological Fund coming to start a project. Will that come in time before the floods get even worse, or this will be after the floods? I'd like you to speak to that, the government's response, and then the timeline for this Ecological Fund project to begin.
Well, I can't say for sure when that project would actually, start. But part of the communique, the report that the Ministry of Environment, tabled after the meeting we had this year, was that government will look into, approving funds for the reconstruction of that breach and also carrying out some construction activities along the drainage path to, put an end to all this incessant flood. Now, it was stated there that this will be communicated to the different government agencies and then money will be raised for that project. When it will actually start, I can't say for sure. But on our own path, we are following up with them and we are using this same medium also to call out that they should also come, through with their own promises. All
right, Mr. Anderson. So let's put some facts around this particular conversation. How many houses are in Trademore? I mean, buildings.
Trademore Estate has well over 2,000 houses.
And then the one the government is planning to earmark is how many?
What the director of them has said, she mentioned about 115.
So by your estimation, do they stand to obstruct anything or would they help in any shape or form because of that opposition to it? Because I'm thinking that for government to earmark over 100 of those buildings to go down, they would have, in their reasoning and wisdom, seen that it's a solution to the problem.
Well, in the words of the director of NEMA, she came on the 24th after the flash flood, and she noted that the waterways have been diverted away from the residential area where residents stay. So I wonder why demolition will still be a solution when she herself noted that the waterways has been diverted away from where residents are staying. So you can see from that her own statement is even contradicting what the reality of
the reason I'm asking that. The reason I'm asking that question, my apologies, is because we need to put the facts right. If the government is insisting, are you saying for a fact that no building in Trademore Estate is of any is not affecting the issue of flooding or not pushing up the issue of flooding as is being put forward by the government here?
Yeah, the buildings in question affecting any activity of flooding are the ones by the gate, the entrance gate where this flash flood actually occurred. And those houses have already been evacuated. In fact, if you visit that very place right now, you've seen that we've gone ahead to remove the roof and put that place up for demolition. We are preparing that place for ecological fund to come in and start the reconstruction of that bridge. That's the only property that should be demolished. Other than that, where residents are staying is far. We have well over 30 meters, to the flood area. So the flood area is not affecting the residents in any way. And as such, demolition is a no-no, solution to that issue.
There's another part I wanted to speak to, which we found out that some estates around Trademore some estates have come up in that area. And the people in Trademore are blaming the erection of those buildings as part of the reason why water is coming into Trademore, is affecting part of Trademore. In your view, should those places be up for demolition as well?
Yeah, this is a cry we made to government, that if they want to demolish, they should actually visit those estates and find out if they have actually built, developed their estates in line with the regulations, that 20 meters should be given on each side away from the drainage path. Now, if you are coming into Trademore, you will notice a bridge just by Wisdom Estate. That bridge used to be very active with, flood water flowing 24/7. But if you go there right now, as we speak, you won't see a trace of water. Now, we have some estate behind us that has actually blocked the access of that, bridge, and that water now is being channeled through Trademore. So you can imagine all the waters coming from Lugbe, from, Voice of Nigeria, all those axes. The volume is what passes through Trademore. And we have done our best to ensure that the drainage path created accommodates that water. So if at all demolition should be done, let them start from those estates that have developed along the waterways, thereby constraining that waterways and allowing water to come into Trademore.
So that keeps recurring, your response to our questions. But the question is, what's the disposition of the residents of those estates as well in this conversation, particularly as it affects Trademore? Are they willing to give? And I'd like you to also speak to this. You said earlier that there's a bridge that gathers rainwater during the rainy season and empties into Trademore. Does that not speak to the location of Trademore on a flood channel?
No, because like I said, those estates have actually gone ahead to block that drainage path.
All right. Almost, thank you so much for your thoughts, and we hope this will be resolved. Mr. Inomesi Tudofia, the spokesperson of Trademore Residents Association Chairman, so that this can, maybe by this time next year, we'll not be talking about this as much as possible. So government and the chairman and everybody concerned should come to the table to resolve this it's looking like an impasse, some sort of, but we know it has a solution. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
I'll take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go to what we consider the lighter side of things. Join us again.